Hello and welcome to Fantastic History. I'm Clay.
I'm Sarah.
We're a husband and wife duo who enjoy telling each other about amazing events, people, and mysteries throughout history. So today, Sarah, I want to talk about the 7 wonders of the ancient world.
Hell yeah.
Everyone knows the term 7 wonders, and most everyone knows what's on the list. But why is there a list of wonders anyway?
Okay.
Why are they even referred to as wonders? Well, that leads directly into our sponsor this week, Alexandria Travels. Is your family tired of seeing the Colosseum and the Parthenon again? Want to see exotic lands with modern-day conveniences? Well, have we got good news for you. The good, the great, the god himself, Alexander III, has conquered much of the world and made amazing sights available to the Greeks for the first time ever. Alexandria Travels customers receive a complimentary guide to the 7 wonders of the world. This exciting parchment details the must-see sights in these newly claimed lands. Act now and enter to win a trip to Babylon to witness amazing walls and gardens. Offers not extended to Egyptians or Persians, destroyed, plundered, and entirely mythological sites not available for refunds. So, Alexander the Great's conquest of much of the world in 4th century BCE allowed travelers to explore the new places like Egypt and Babylon.
Sure.
And they were so impressed by these exotic lands that they started to share the must-see things in these lands, like an ancient guidebook. These sites eventually changed, the term sites eventually changed to wonders. And from there, it was only natural that people would start creating lists of the absolute best wonders. We have found lists as old as 100 BCE from Antipater of Sidon, and more lists occurring afterwards for centuries. And they're kind of referring to most of the same locations, although there's been like 1 or 2 that are a little bit different, but most of them are usually the same.
Interesting.
Some lists only survive partially, so we can't always determine what was on each list or what the maybe the oldest list was, but most have survived intact. And that list is as follows: the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the Temple of Artemis, the statue of Zeus at Olympia, the mausoleum at Halicarnassus, the Colossus of Rhodes, and the Lighthouse of Alexandria. Now, this list does lean heavily Greek.
Gee, I wonder why.
And that would make sense since it was mostly Greek writers that were making these lists, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to go through these 7 wonders, why they were built, and why all but one of them don't exist anymore.
Right.
So let's start with the oldest, and we'll go from the oldest to the newest.
Okay.
I thought that might be kind of fun.
Sure.
The oldest was built so long ago that it's older to the Hellenistic Greeks than the Hellenistic Greeks are to us.
Wow.
Which is crazy
sure
to think about.
It certainly is.
The Great Pyramid of Giza is the largest of the Egyptian pyramids and was built to be the resting place for Pharaoh Khufu. It was designed by the architect Hemiunu in 2600 BCE.
That is wild that we know the architect's name.
Yeah.
That is so wild.
Yeah.
Good for him.
It's true. Construction took over 25 years and comprised of 2.3 million blocks, including 5.5 million tons of limestone, 8,000 tons of granite, and 500,000 tons of mortar.
That's a lot.
Granite stones were transported to Giza by boat on the Nile River from Aswan, nearly 550 miles away.
Crikey.
And that includes the largest stone weighing a staggering 80 tons.
Oh my.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So the pyramid base is aligned to the 4 geographic cardinal directions to an accuracy of nearly a tenth of a degree,
Holy crap.
a feat achieved by the ancient Egyptians by simply tracking stars and shadows.
Wow.
However, the exact method of construction is not fully known, kind of famously not fully known.
Right.
Many theories have been presented, and it has been proven that construction was possible, even with these massive blocks that they were working with. No ancient aliens required.
You love ancient aliens.
Yeah, I can't get enough of them. But at its completion, the Great Pyramid stood at a height of 481 feet, and it was covered in glistening white limestone and capped with a pyramidion of gold.
Interesting.
It was surrounded by temples, smaller pyramids, tombs, cemeteries, boat pits, and the Great Sphinx. The splendor of the pyramids remained for thousands of years, while pollution and erosion were taking their toll on it. And then an earthquake in 1300 caused many of the limestones to break apart.
Oh, no.
From 1300 to 1800, the limestones were removed and used in other construction projects across Cairo, such as the Alabaster Mosque in the 19th century. It's unknown why the tippy top of the pyramid had been lost, but we know it existed at some point.
I mean, probably because it was made of gold.
It's possible. It was possibly made of gold.
I see.
But whatever it was truly made of, I'm sure it was a very sought-after piece.
Mm-hmm.
The many tombs in Giza had been plundered long before Europeans were digging in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
But the Great Pyramid truly lives up to its name. It was the tallest man-made structure until the 14th century. And it's the
Whoa.
yeah. And it is the only structure on this list to remain to this day.
That's so crazy.
It is. Now, the second on this list couldn't be more different than the pyramids, in that we don't even know if this wonder was real at all. The building of lush gardens in the Middle East was certainly a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was a display of beauty and wealth. To be able to have a garden in basically the desert, right? But the Hanging Gardens of Babylon were told to be the largest, most incredible, beautiful garden structure in the Middle East, built by King Nebuchadnezzar II in 1600 BCE for his wife who missed the green mountains of her homeland.
Mm.
The gardens are described as a tiered structure with each tier supported by thick walls and pillars. Each tier was deep enough for the deep, thick roots of the large trees that grew on each level of the structure. And it stood nearly 75 feet tall. And it was described as some by being irrigated by a screw-type system of raising water to the several tiers that needed, water to operate.
Sure.
And it got water from the Euphrates River. However, the Hanging Gardens don't appear in any Babylonian records or writings.
You would really think they would.
You would think so. And no archaeological evidence of the gardens has ever been found. Historian Stephanie Daly has proposed that the Hanging Gardens legend was inspired or misattributed to the historically confirmed gardens of the Assyrian king at his palace in Nineveh.
Okay.
While not a single multi-leveled garden structure, the gardens at Nineveh did use these vast aqueducts, and they did use this screw-type system of raising water to upper levels.
Interesting.
Now, his garden was built nearly 100 years before the legendary gardens of Babylon were supposedly built. So this theory does have some legs.
Sure.
But we just don't know for sure. In 1612, a series of civil wars caused Nineveh to be seized and burned to the ground.
Oh, uh-oh.
So these beautiful gardens were destroyed.
Sure.
But archaeological evidence, can confirm that they were real, whereas the Babylonian gardens may have only been mythical.
That's really strange.
Yeah. Not long after the destruction of Nineveh, in the city of Ephesus, the king of Lydia, Croesus, sponsored and financed the construction of the temple to the goddess Artemis in 550 BCE.
Yeah, boy.
Now-
We love Artemis.
Now, this temple was amazing, and I wish we were a video podcast because these, you got to really see them to appreciate them.
Sure.
This temple was rectangular in design, surrounded by marble columns with lots of detailed carvings. And the temple was built on marshy ground, which did not contribute to its destruction, but instead allowed many of the offerings left by visitors to be preserved in the soft ground and found later by archaeologists,
Wow.
making this an incredible site for finding ancient coins and stuff. The temple was burned down in 365 BCE by a man named Herostratus, who did so to seek fame at any cost.
Well, I guess it worked.
Yes. Greek and Roman history explained that the goddess was distracted at the time by the birth of Alexander the Great.
Oh.
And that's why she allowed the temple to be burned.
Interesting.
Yeah. So Alexander offered to rebuild it, but the offer was refused. Apparently, the story goes that they said, no, a god should not rebuild the temple of another god. But I don't know if that's what really happened.
But Alexander was a guy?
He was a god, according to them.
Huh.
It was, however, rebuilt in 323 BCE, bigger than before, with 127 60-foot columns
Get 'em,
surrounding the
Artemis?
structure.
Crikey.
This phase stood for 600 years until a raid by the Goths greatly damaged the temple in 268 CE.
It's messed up.
Then finally, around 400 CE, the remainder of the temple was completely leveled by Archbishop of Constantinople, John Chrysostom. It was rediscovered in 1869 by John Turtlewood, and today is marked by a single pillar of material found at the site.
Wow. That's a bummer.
Yeah, it's really something that you would have loved to see.
Well, yeah, Artemis is rad. We love her.
Oh, yeah. The fourth wonder is the only one located in Greece. In 435 BCE, the custodians of the Olympic Games, looking to show up their Athenian rivals, commissioned the Greek sculptor Phidias to create a 41-foot tall statue of Zeus.
Hell yeah.
For reference, the statue of Lincoln at the Lincoln Memorial is only 19 feet tall.
And this one's 41, you said?
Yeah.
Oh, my. That's a big fella.
The statue is made with gold and ivory, called a chryselephantine statue, and it sat on a painted cedarwood throne adorned with ebony, gold, and precious stones. The statue was housed in a temple that was just large enough to contain it, and as the Greek geographer Strabo noted in the 1st century, it gave the impression that if Zeus were to rise and stand erect, he would unroof the temple. So it gave this impression of like the temple could barely contain him.
That does sound like Zeus.
In the 2nd century CE, there's some greater detail. The statue was crowned with a sculpted wreath of olive sprays and wore a gilded robe made of glass and carved with animals and lilies.
Whoa.
In its right hand stood a statue of the crowned god Nike, the goddess of victory.
Sure.
In its left, a scepter inlaid with many metals supporting an eagle. According to legend, the Roman Emperor Caligula ordered that statues like this were to be beheaded, and his head was to replace them.
That guy was cuckoo.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true, but it's pretty funny.
If it is true, that's like the least nutso thing he ever did, honestly.
However, he was assassinated before the order could be carried out.
Sure.
In 391 CE, the Roman Emperor Theodosius first banned pagan cults and closed their temples. And the fate of the statue is not known.
How? It's a 41-foot statue.
It's pretty big.
You can't just lose it.
So an 11th century historian suggests that it was taken to Constantinople and destroyed in the fire that destroyed the Palace of Lausus in 475 CE.
Hmm.
But beyond the stories of it, well, I mean, we just don't know. We don't know what happened. The records are lost. These things just happen.
Hmm.
Some things just disappear. Even giant statues.
I was gonna, you know what? He probably stood up, busted out of the temple, like shattered it to smithereens, and just like walked off about his business.
Maybe he took off like Superman.
You don't know. There's no records.
So things like this, we've said it a dozen times, if not less, but it's hard to verify historical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So when you take in, like with the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, you want records from the people whose city it was in
Right.
to confirm it, or you don't know. But beyond the stories that we have of the statue of Zeus, historians have confirmed the statue's existence because it appears on coins that were found at the day. And the discovery of Phidias's workshop, where tools for working with the metals of the statue were found. So, pretty sure it existed, and it would have been amazing to see. So the fifth wonder could have been found just 100 miles south of the Temple of Artemis in the harbor city of Halicarnassus.
Okay.
In 377 BCE, the ruler of this region of the Achaemenid Empire, named Hecatomnus of Milos, I hope I'm saying that right, died and left his kingdom to his son Mausolus. Mausolus ruled for 24 years and extended his territory across the western coast of Asia Minor. He eventually decided to build a new capital city and chose Halicarnassus, which had a city that had fallen into neglect.
Mm-hmm.
So he and his wife Artemisa rebuilt the city with new buildings and temples. But before Mausolus died, he began designing a tomb which was inspired by the tombs of Xanthos and was designed with Greek and Persian architecture. And after his death in 353 BCE, his wife ensured the tomb would be completed to his specifications before her own death 2 years later.
Mm.
The mausoleum of Halicarnassus was indeed so magnificent that King Mausolus is where the word mausoleum derives.
That's so wild.
It's his tomb where we get that name. Crazy. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So the mausoleum sat in a courtyard overlooking the city on a stone platform. The massive podium was adorned with columns and its outer walls decorated with beautiful statues and reliefs. The top section featured 36 columns with more statues, and at the roof was a pyramid shape, and atop the pinnacle was a statue of a chariot pulled by 4 horses carrying Mausolus and his wife.
Jeez.
So this thing was towering and amazing. The mausoleum lasted the longest of any of the wonders, except for the pyramid, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Surviving the invasion of Alexander the Great into the Crusades. Eustathius wrote that in the 12th century that the mausoleum still stood, but the Knights of St. John of Jerusalem recorded in 1402 that it was in ruins.
Huh.
So it's believed that sometime between these dates, we're not sure when, it had collapsed due to one or more earthquakes.
Dang.
The remains of the mausoleum were used to fortify the castle at Bodrum during the Crusades.
Okay, now that castle is haunted. Like, are you kidding me?
Possibly.
This is Ghosts 101.
Some statues and many reliefs depicting the Amazonaki, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but it's the mythical battle between the Greeks and the Amazons.
Okay.
And those have been recovered from the fort in the original site. So we have a few statues, but apparently there were dozens,
Right.
maybe over 100. And these insanely detailed reliefs that we can only we have some of them, but they're in pretty bad shape.
That's really depressing.
Yeah. Venturing further down the Anatolian seaboard, you'll find the island of Rhodes, where the sixth wonder once stood. In the late 14th century BCE, during the Diadochi Wars, Rhodes was attacked by Demetrius, son of Antigonus, and laid siege to the city for nearly a year. However, the city did not fall, and Demetrius left, leaving behind many of his siege engines. Rhodes sold these siege engines and used the funds to construct a statue of their patron god Helios
Nice.
in honor of their victory. I just love that.
Yeah.
You sold their weapons
Mm-hmm.
to build a statue saying, we won.
Yeah. Just melt down the weapons and use that to make the statue.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So the work was appointed to the sculptor Charis of Lindos to build this colossus. It stood on a marble platform somewhere near the Rhodes Harbor entrance, though we don't know exactly where it was because it's not there anymore. Spoilers. Sure. The iron and bronze Colossus of Rhodes stood 105 feet tall.
Whoa.
Close to the height of the Statue of Liberty.
Oh.
And was certainly the tallest statue of the ancient world. Some depictions and literary works suggest that the Colossus straddled the harbor.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, that's everything that I've seen. He's like got one leg on each island.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
and ships could pass under it.
yeah.
But this was not the case.
Oh.
That was not how it was done.
Well, then I'm glad it's gone because that's lame.
That would have been amazing.
Right?
It was completed in 280 BCE, but it didn't stand for very long.
Oh, come on.
Just 54 years later, in 226 BCE, an earthquake caused the statue to break at the knees and collapse into nearby buildings.
Oh, my God. Oh, dear.
The Oracle of Delphi convinced Rhodians that they had offended Helios.
Yeah, she did.
So the offers of other kingdoms to pay for its reconstruction were declined.
Uh-huh.
So the statue just sat there on the ground for nearly 800 years.
Whoa.
But even in its collapsed state, it was an impressive sight.
Sure.
People still wanted to come and see it because it was still amazing, even if it wasn't exactly the way it was intended to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
Pliny the Elder remarked that the statue's thumb was so big that few men could clasp their arms around it.
Wow.
That's how big this thing was. So as I said, it laid there for about 800 years until it was eventually plundered after the city fell to the Arabs.
Great, thanks.
And finally, the seventh wonder of the world takes us back to the beginning, Egypt. After Alexander the Great captured Egypt, he decided to build a great Greek city on the coast from which he could look out towards his homeland.
Okay.
He named the city what?
Atlantis.
Alexandria.
Okay, never mind.
You know.
I just thought,
No.
Okay.
Funnily enough, after choosing the site and designating that Dinocrates of Rhodes was to be the architect of his new favorite city in the whole world, Alexander never returned to it. He was like, I want to build a city here that I can look out and see my homeland. And then he said, okay, I'll see you later. He never showed up.
He's he does what our kid has started doing. Okay, bye.
Yeah, he just left. But the plans continued as instructed, and Alexandria was built. After Alex's death in 323 BCE, the first Ptolemy declared himself king of Egypt and commissioned the construction of a magnificent lighthouse on the small nearby island next to Alexandria called Pharos. The lighthouse was completed by his son, at the latest by around 246 BCE.
Mm-hmm.
Made of solid blocks of limestone and granite, and reaching to a staggering height of 387 feet. It was the third tallest structure in the world at the time.
Dang.
It was comprised of a tall rectangular tower, then above it a cylindrical tower, and then crowned with a beacon. And at the very, very tip top of the structure, a statue of Zeus Soter, Zeus the Savior.
Nice.
The magnificent Pharos lighthouse lasted almost as long as the mausoleum, but it too fell victim to a series of earthquakes in the late first millennium. Attempts were made to keep the lighthouse repaired, but there's only so much you can do, really.
Yeah.
By the 1300s, the destruction caused by multiple earthquakes over the centuries just proved too much. It had collapsed at some point. We don't know exactly when, but it was just collapsed and in a state of complete disrepair. A fort was eventually built in its place over some of the ruins, and I believe the site where it once stood has now been reclaimed by the sea.
Wow. Good for her.
Yeah. And hey, those are the 7 wonders of the ancient world.
I feel sad now.
Yeah, it's kind of sad that we can't see most of them. But you know what? While I was researching this, I was reminded of how interesting it is that we still hold to this list, despite the fact that it's so clearly biased to Greek writers and travelers.
Right.
I mean, these things I'm sure, were incredible at the time. But, I mean, it included a site that likely didn't exist at all.
Sure.
So where were they getting this? So I would like to do a follow-up episode of the 7 or so other wonders of the ancient world.
Okay.
Because there are so many amazing things that were built that the Greeks never saw.
Right.
Things like farther east.
Yeah.
Or farther south.
Yeah.
Or in the Americas. There's a lot of amazing things that a whole nother list could be made, and it would be just as incredible. And most of those things still stand today.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, probably better.
It better from the perspective of we can look at them and go, ooh. How cool is that?
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for listening to another episode of Fantastic History. If you liked this episode, you know what you can do? Leave a review or rate it 5 stars if you're feeling so inclined. You can also reach out to us by email. We are fantastichistorypod@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram, fantastichpod, and we're on YouTube. We're at Fantastic History Podcast. That's also where you'll find us on TikTok. All right. Until next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.